Over her career, Cathy Smith Andrew has been a teacher, a state senator, and more recently has worked with Indiana University. Wife and mother, she experienced something that happens to 1 in 3 women in our country. She was a survivor of domestic violence.
I felt as though no one else in the whole world was going through what I was going through. But I had a daughter named Allison, and she didn't ask to be born into a domestically violent family. And so when we lived through the terrible night we lived through together, and she was 3, I made a decision that I would not be a victim, that I would not perpetuate anything that had happened to me with her biological father, that I wanted her to see me as someone up to, as someone who fought hard for not only myself but for other women, other families who had to go through what we went through.
After being held at knife point, Cathy and Allison were aided by a neighbor who knocked at the door, and they left that night. Later, their family gained a husband and dad in George Smith. George and Allison were very supportive when, after decades of teaching, Cathy was encouraged to run for the state senate.
I had to think about it a good long time and have a talk with my family. It's a situation where you don't just put yourself into it, it's a family affair. You have to have the backing of your family. If you didn't, you couldn't do it. You just couldn't do it. So they were all gung-ho and thought I should try.
For her to be a senator, we worked our rear ends off on the campaign, walking over to 10,000 doors each campaign, talking to people, listening to what their concerns were, following up with them, and that was a lot of work. And she did it every day. And being a senator, you're on call 24 hours, 7 days a week. She would get phone calls in the middle of the night, and those are her constituents, and she never denied.
Throughout her tenure as a senator, Cathy often spoke about domestic violence and sexual assault and services needed for victims. She shared her story with audiences frequently surprised to learn that she was a survivor.
And when I testified in the committee and told them that I, in fact, was an abused spouse, I mean, all the mouths dropped open. So when their friend Cathy was someone who'd gone through that, a great deal to them. They weren't going to let that happen to some other Cathy.
Cathy worked on legislation including the Crime Victims Notification Bill and Indiana's first successful marital rape law before Governor Frank O'Bannon asked her to work in his education cabinet. She was later tapped to become the Associate Director of State Relations for IU.
So I got to talk to the people I loved about the university I loved. So that was a perfect way to do what I continue to do, to give back. I think some people are very religious and some people live their religion as well, and that's what I've always tried to do. I've always tried to make my little piece of the world a better place because I was there.
Cathy plans to leave IU soon, but her years advocating for survivors of domestic violence will certainly continue. She is now married to Bob Andrew, and her daughter Allison continues to be a voice of support.
She's continually improving the law, families, in everything she does. I don't think she'll ever stop. She plans to retire in June, but I think she's going to do something else to make sure that people have that helping hand that they need.